What if I told you that entire kingdoms, once thriving with power, culture, and grandeur, have vanished from the pages of history, leaving behind only whispers and riddles? These aren't just places lost to time, they're realms wrapped in legend where the line between fact and folklore blurs into something unforgettable. From the sunken streets of Atlantis to the golden spires of El Dorado, humanity has always been obsessed with the idea of civilizations that slipped through our grasp, leaving behind tantalizing clues and questions that refuse to be silenced. And today, we're embarking on a journey to uncover 25 of these lost kingdoms, each one a puzzle waiting to be solved. Think about it. How does an entire kingdom simply disappear? Was it swallowed by the earth, drowned beneath the waves, or erased by conquest and time? The stories behind these fallen realms are more than just footnotes in history. They're epic sagas of ambition, betrayal, and sometimes sheer mystery. Some were real, their ruins still standing as silent witnesses to their former glory. Others live on in myth so vivid they've sparked quests for centuries. But whether fact or fable, each one holds a mirror to our own fascination with the unknown, with the idea that somewhere out there, a forgotten throne waits to be rediscovered. So if you've ever wondered what happened to the empire that inspired the legend of Prester John, or why the location of the fabled Zazora remains one of the Sahara's greatest secrets, you're in the right place. This isn't just a list, it's an expedition. We'll traverse deserts, dive into ocean depths, and decode ancient texts to piece together the truth behind these 25 lost kingdoms of myth and legend. Some will shock you, others might make you question everything you thought you knew about history. But one thing's certain, by the end you'll see the past and its disappearing acts in a whole new light. Ready to uncover the impossible? Let's begin. Of all the lost kingdoms that haunt the edges of history, none has captured our imagination quite like Atlantis. The story begins with Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, who first described it around 360 BCE. He painted a picture of an island empire more advanced than any other, a maritime superpower with towering cities, intricate canals, and technology far beyond its time. But it wasn't just their innovation that sealed their fate, it was their arrogance. According to Plato, the Atlanteans grew corrupt, their pride angering the gods, who sent earthquakes and floods to swallow the entire civilization in a single catastrophic day. And just like that, Atlantis was gone, sinking beneath the waves as if it had never existed. But here's the twist: Plato himself might never have intended Atlantis to be real. Some scholars argue he invented it as a cautionary tale, a fictional allegory about the dangers of hubris. Yet for over 2,000 years, explorers, archaeologists, and dreamers have refused to let it go. The Mediterranean, the Caribbean, even Antarctica, every corner of the globe has been proposed as Atlantis's final resting place. Some point to the island of Santorini, where a volcanic eruption around 1600 BC wiped out the Minoan civilization, eerily mirroring Plato's account. Others swear by the Azores or the Bahamas, where underwater formations like the Bimini Road spark whispers of ancient ruins. What makes Atlantis endure isn't just the mystery of its location, it's the idea it represents. A civilization so advanced it feels almost alien, a reminder that even the greatest empires can vanish in an instant. It's inspired countless books, films, and expeditions, even shaping how we imagine other lost worlds. Whether Atlantis was real or not, its legacy is undeniable. It's the ultimate what-if proof that some stories never fade, no matter how deep they sink. While Atlantis sank beneath myth and waves, another lost kingdom glitters just out of reach, not in the depths of the ocean, but hidden deep in the jungles of South America. El Dorado, the Golden One, began not as a city but as a man. The Muisca people of present-day Colombia had a tradition. Their newly crowned king would cover himself in gold dust, then dive into Lake Guatavita as an offering to the gods. Spanish conquistadors, already intoxicated by the treasures of the Aztecs and Incas, twisted this ritual into something grander, a city paved with gold where wealth dripped from every temple and tree. Gonzalo Pizarro's disastrous 1541 expedition set the tone for centuries of obsession. Thousands died searching for El Dorado in the Amazon's unforgiving terrain, from starving soldiers to Sir Walter Raleigh, who bankrupted himself and lost his son to the fantasy. Yet the truth might be stranger than fiction. Recent discoveries, like the ancient settlements uncovered with LiDAR technology beneath the Amazon canopy, reveal sprawling networks of roads and temples, proof that advanced societies did flourish where explorers swore El Dorado lay. Was it all a misunderstanding or a deliberate mirage? Some scholars argue indigenous people, watching the Spanish destroy everything they touched, spun tales of distant gold to lure invaders away. Others believe El Dorado evolved into a metaphor not just for greed, but for the eternal human chase after the unattainable. Even today, treasure hunters dive into Lake Guatavita, finding tiny golden artifacts but never the king's ransom they crave. The real El Dorado might not be a place at all, but a warning. Sometimes the greatest treasures are the stories we can't stop telling. Far removed from drowned cities and golden mirages, a different kind of lost kingdom lingers in the mist, one woven from swords, sorcery, and the promise of return. Avalon, the mythical island from Arthurian legend, isn't just a place. It's a symbol of hope, healing, and the thin veil between our world and the supernatural. First appearing in Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century chronicles, Avalon was described as an enchanted isle where Excalibur was forged and where the wounded King Arthur was carried after his final battle at Camlan. But what makes Avalon so captivating isn't just its role in the Arthurian saga, it's how it straddles the line between Celtic mythology and medieval Christian fantasy, blending ancient beliefs with New World longing. The name itself whispers of older traditions. Derived from the Welsh word Avalon, meaning Isle of Apples, Avalon echoes Celtic otherworlds like Tyr na and Og, realms of eternal youth and abundance, hidden just beyond mortal sight. In these pre-Arthurian myths, such islands were places where time stood still, where heroes and gods mingled, and where sickness or death held no power. Medieval writers, eager to Christianize these pagan tales, reimagined Avalon as a sanctified retreat, some even claiming it housed Joseph of Arimathea's holy relics. By the High Middle Ages, Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset capitalized on the legend, declaring their marshes the real Avalon after allegedly discovering Arthur and Guinevere's bones beneath their grounds, a convenient publicity stunt to attract pilgrims and patronage. Yet Avalon's endurance goes beyond medieval marketing. Its legacy thrives because it answers a human ache for renewal. Unlike Atlantis's punishment or El Dorado's greed, Avalon represents a sanctuary, a place where even the gravest wounds, physical or spiritual, can be mended. Modern seekers still pilgrimage to Glastonbury Tor, that eerie hill rising from the flats, convinced its terraced slopes mirror the spiral paths to the otherworld. And in literature, from Tennyson's poetry to Marion Zimmer Bradley's novels, Avalon evolves, always just out of reach but never forgotten. Perhaps that's its true magic, not in existing as a pinpoint on a map, but as a reminder that some realms aren't lost. They're waiting, patient as the tide, for those who still believe. While Atlantis dominated Western imagination, another lost land whispered from the waters of the Indian Ocean, Lemuria. Unlike the cautionary tales spun by Plato, Lemuria emerged from 19th century science, not myth. British zoologist Philip Sclater coined the name in 1864, puzzled by a peculiar fact: lemur fossils found in India and Madagascar, but nowhere in between. To explain this gap, he proposed a sunken land bridge, a lost continent that once connected these distant shores. The scientific community, lacking modern plate tectonics, embraced the idea eagerly. For decades, Lemuria appeared in textbooks as a plausible answer to nature's riddles, a vanished world that explained not just animal migrations but also geological mysteries. But Lemuria's true intrigue lies in how it escaped the lab and leapt into legend. Tamil poets and scholars in southern India recognized their own drowned homeland in Sclater's theory. Ancient Sangam literature spoke of Kumari Kandam, a vast kingdom swallowed by the sea thousands of years ago. According to these texts, it was a cradle of Tamil civilization, a sophisticated society lost to rising waters. When Western scientists named Lemuria, Tamil revivalists saw confirmation of their oral histories. The two narratives, one scientific, one cultural, twined together, creating a mythos far richer than Sclater ever intended. By the 20th century, plate tectonics shattered Lemuria's scientific credibility. The movement of continents, not a sunken landmass, explained the Lemur fossil record. Yet, like Atlantis, Lemuria refused to fade. Theosophists adopted it as a spiritual predecessor to Atlantis, home to an ancient, enlightened race. Writers and mystics spun tales of its utopian cities and telepathic inhabitants. Today, Lemuria persists as a cultural touchstone for Tamil nationalists. It's proof of a glorious past. For New Age seekers, it's a vanished paradise. Science may have debunked it, but the human hunger for lost worlds ensures Lemuria's legacy endures. A reminder that some lands vanish twice, first from the earth, then from the realm of fact into the immortality of story. High in the mist-wrapped peaks of the Himalayas, where the air grows thin and the mountains seem to touch the sky, there's a legend of a valley untouched by time, a sanctuary of wisdom and peace hidden from the world's chaos. This is Shangri-La, the fictional paradise James Hilton introduced in his 1933 novel Lost Horizon, a place where aging slows to a crawl, where libraries hold ancient knowledge and where harmony reigns supreme. But what makes Shangri-La more than just a writer's fantasy is how deeply it's tangled with real Tibetan Buddhist beliefs, particularly the myth of Shambhala, a sacred kingdom said to exist somewhere beyond the snow-capped ranges. Hilton's Shangri-La wasn't born from thin air. He drew from centuries of Himalayan lore, especially the concept of Baal hidden valleys blessed by Buddhist masters as refuges during dark times. These weren't just physical places but spiritual sanctuaries accessible only to the pure of heart. Shambhala, in particular, captivated explorers and scholars alike. Tibetan texts describe it as a realm of enlightened beings, a circular kingdom guarded by towering mountains, where rulers preserve sacred teachings until the world is ready for them. Some believe it's a physical place tucked into the remotest corners of Tibet or Mongolia. Others argue it exists in another dimension, visible only to those who have achieved spiritual awakening. The blur between Hilton's fiction and these enduring myths sparked a frenzy of real-world quests. Towns from China's Yunnan province to Nepal's Mustang Valley have rebranded themselves as the Shangri-La, capitalizing on the allure. In 2001, Zhongdian County officially renamed itself Shangri-La, complete with tourist-friendly monasteries and hotels draped in prayer flags. Meanwhile, Bhutan's hidden valleys, like the breathtaking Phobjika, lean into their resemblance to Hilton's vision, offering travelers a taste of the myth. Even the Dalai Lama acknowledged the connection, calling Shambhala a pure land that exists both within and beyond our world. But here's the twist: the true power of Shangri-La isn't in finding it, it's in the search itself. Whether as a literary device, a spiritual ideal, or a marketing tool, the idea endures because it speaks to a universal longing. In a fractured, hurried world, who wouldn't yearn for a haven where time stands still, where conflict dissolves, and where the secrets of a wiser age are kept safe? Shangri-La may have started as a novelist's dream, but its grip on our imagination proves that some legends, no matter how elusive, refuse to fade. Off the storm-lashed coast of Brittany, where the Atlantic gnaws at the jagged cliffs, lies a legend as dark and shifting as the tides. the story of Wise, the sinful city swallowed by the sea. Unlike Atlantis's grand civilization punished for collective hubris, Wise's downfall is achingly personal, tangled in the reckless passions of its ruler, King Gradlon, and his doomed daughter, Dahat. According to Breton folklore, Wise was a marvel of engineering, a city built below sea level behind towering walls and a massive gate, its locks guarded by a single silver key. By day, it glittered with wealth and artistry. By night, it drowned in debauchery, its streets alive with music and excess. And at the center of it all was Dahat, the flame-haired princess who led the revelry, her wild spirit both Wise's brightest light and its fatal flaw. The tale takes a chilling turn with the arrival of a mysterious knight clad in red. Seduced by his otherworldly charm, Dahat steals her father's key at the stranger's urging, unlocking the floodgates during a tempest. As the waters rush in, the knight reveals himself as no man but a demon, laughing as the waves claim the city. King Gradlon, warned by Saint Winwallow, manages to escape on his magical horse Morvark, but Dahat clings to him, her weight dragging them both toward doom. In some versions, Gradlon chooses righteousness over love, pushing his daughter into the sea. In others, she transforms into a mermaid, cursed to sing sailors to their deaths. Either way, Wise vanishes beneath the waves, its bells still said to toll from the depths during storms. What makes Wise so haunting isn't just its tragedy, it's how it refracts universal themes through a local lens. Like Atlantis, it's a morality tale about divine retribution, but here the focus narrows to intimate failings, a father's indulgence, a daughter's rebellion, and the cost of unchecked desire. The parallels with other flood myths are striking. Noah's Ark, the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, even the indigenous Hawaiian story of Noah, all societies cleansed by water for their transgressions. Yet Wise feels different, rooted in a specific landscape and culture. Fishermen still point to the Bay of Douarnenez, where lanterns flicker beneath the surface, insisting the city's towers remain intact down there. Modern interpretations read Wise as a cautionary fable about environmental fragility, a coastal community defying nature until nature fights back. Others see Dahat as a feminist icon, a woman demonized for her autonomy in a patriarchal world. But perhaps its power lies in its ambiguity. Is Dahat a villain or a victim? Was Wise a den of vice or a place of joyous freedom? The story thrives because it refuses easy answers, just like the sea that hides it, giving us not just a lost kingdom, but a mirror for our own contradictions. North of the known world, where the howling winds of Boreas could never reach, the ancient Greeks spoke of a land untouched by sorrow or strife, Hyperborea. Unlike Atlantis with its tragic fall or Wise with its moral reckoning, Hyperborea was a realm forever bathed in sunlight, its people living in perfect harmony with nature, untouched by disease or old age. According to legend, this utopia lay beyond the northern mountains, a place so sacred that even time itself moved differently there. The god Apollo, patron of music, healing, and prophecy, was said to winter among the Hyperboreans, drawn by their piety and the celestial melodies of their hymns. Golden arrows, symbols of his favor, were believed to fly between Delphi and Hyperborea, connecting the divine and mortal realms. But what's fascinating isn't just the myth itself, it's how it blurred the line between reverence and reality. Some scholars argue Hyperborea wasn't pure fantasy but a distorted echo of real Arctic cultures. The Scythians, nomadic tribes of the Eurasian steppes, described lands where the sun never set in summer, mirroring Greek accounts of eternal daylight. Inuit and Sami oral traditions, rich with tales of benevolent spirits and abundant hunting grounds, might have filtered south through trade routes, morphing into the Hyperborean ideal. Even the name hints at this cultural fusion. Hyperborea translates to beyond the north wind, but in Turkic languages, Boreas resembles words for wolf, a creature sacred to many northern peoples. Then came the 20th century when this ancient myth took a sinister turn. Nazi occultists obsessed with finding the Aryan homeland latched onto Hyperborea as proof of a lost white super-civilization. Figures like Heinrich Himmler funded expeditions to Tibet and Scandinavia, searching for Hyperborean descendants they believed possessed pure bloodline traits. The Thule Society, a key ideological force behind the Nazi regime, even named itself after Ultima Thule, a mythical northern island later conflated with Hyperborea. This grotesque appropriation twisted a once beautiful allegory into a tool for hate, divorcing it from its original context of spiritual refuge and natural bounty. Yet Hyperborea's legacy isn't confined to these dark chapters. Modern researchers revisit the myth with fresh eyes, asking whether it preserves ancestral memories of prehistoric climate shifts. During the last ice age, parts of the Arctic were surprisingly temperate, with lush valleys that could have supported early human settlements. Could Hyperborea be a fragmented recollection of these lost green sanctuaries, passed down through generations? Or is its enduring appeal simpler, a human yearning for a place where life isn't just survived but savored? Unlike other lost kingdoms, Hyperborea wasn't destroyed. It was, and perhaps still is, waiting beyond the cold, not as a location, but as an invitation to imagine a world unbroken by strife. Off the southwestern tip of England, where Cornwall's rugged cliffs meet the crashing waves of the Atlantic, lies a legend as haunting as the ocean itself, Lyonesse, the sunken kingdom said to stretch all the way to the Isles of Scilly before vanishing beneath the sea. Unlike Wise, whose downfall was tied to moral failings, Lyonesse's tragedy feels almost accidental, a quiet slip into the depths. But what makes this lost land unforgettable isn't just its watery grave, it's its unexpected ties to King Arthur, its eerie real-world echoes, and the lingering question, was it ever real at all? The Arthurian connection runs deep. In Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, Lyonesse is home to Tristan, the tragic knight whose love story with ice-old rivals even Lancelot and Guinevere. Here, Lyonesse isn't just a backdrop, it's a land of towering castles and misty moors, a place where chivalry and sorrow intertwine. Later folklore weaves it even tighter into myth, suggesting it was the final battleground where Arthur fought Mordred, the earth itself collapsing beneath their armies as if the land couldn't bear the weight of their betrayal. But Lyonesse's roots might be older than Arthur. Cornish traditions speak of Lethausto, a prosperous realm ruled by a king named Jethu, whose arrogance led the sea to swallow his kingdom in a single night. The parallels to other flood myths from Atlantis to Wise are impossible to ignore, yet Lyonesse feels distinctly local, its fate tied to the very real dangers of living at the ocean's mercy. And here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Modern geology suggests Lyonesse might not be pure fiction. The stretch of sea between Cornwall and the Scilly Isles, known as the Isles of Scilly Rise, is surprisingly shallow, less than 5 meters deep in places. Sonar mapping has revealed submerged stone walls, field boundaries, and even what appear to be ancient hut circles, all hinting at human habitation. Archaeologists point to a time around 3,000 years ago when sea levels were lower, and this area could have been dry land dotted with settlements. A catastrophic storm surge or gradual rising waters might have forced people to abandon their homes, leaving behind fragmented memories that later blossomed into legend. Fishermen still report dragging up pieces of fossilized wood or strange, worked stones in their nets, while locals swear that during storms, the distant ringing of church bells can be heard beneath the waves. So was Lyonesse real? The answer, like the kingdom itself, lies somewhere between land and sea. It might not have been the Arthurian paradise of legend, but it's almost certain that people once lived where there's now only water. The stories of drowned churches, of a lone survivor galloping to safety on a white horse, of a land lost to time aren't just fables. They're a testament to humanity's stubborn refusal to let the past disappear entirely, even when the evidence slips beneath the tide. Lioness endures not because it was grand, but because it feels possible, a ghost of history whispering from the seabed. Deep in the shifting sands of the Arabian Peninsula, where the wind sculpts dunes into shapes that vanish by morning, lies the story of Irram of the Pillars, a city so proud, so defiant, that even the desert couldn't bury its memory. The Quran tells of Irram in Surah Al-Fajr, describing it as a towering metropolis built by the tribe of Ad, a people blessed with immense strength and wealth but cursed by their own arrogance. Unlike the gradual declines of Atlantis or Lyonesse, Irram's end came swiftly, annihilated by a divine wind that raged for 7 nights and 8 days, scouring every trace of its grandeur from the earth. Historians and theologians have debated for centuries, was Irram a real city punished for its sins, or a cautionary tale woven into the fabric of faith? What makes Irram so compelling isn't just its fate. It's the eerie specificity of its descriptions. Early Islamic scholars like Ibn Kathir wrote of golden palaces supported by colossal columns, of gardens fed by miraculous springs in a land where water was more precious than gold. The tribe of Ad, said to be giants who could uproot trees with their bare hands, became symbols of hubris, their downfall a warning against challenging the divine. But here's where the story takes a turn. In the 1990s, satellite imagery revealed a peculiar network of ancient roads converging beneath Oman's empty quarter, leading archaeologists to a site called Ubar. Dubbed the Atlantis of the Sands, Ubar's ruins, collapsed wells and fortress walls half buried in sand matched legends of Irram so closely that headlines declared the lost city found. Yet the truth, as always, is messier than myth. While Ubar was indeed a thriving frankincense trading hub around 3,000 years ago, skeptics argue it's too young to be the Irram of Quranic lore. Others point to older sites in Yemen, where inscriptions referencing Ad have been found, or to the vast, unexplored stretches of the Rub al-Khali Desert, where entire cities could still lie hidden. The debate reveals something deeper than archaeology. Irram isn't just a place we're trying to locate, it's a mirror reflecting our own fascination with civilizations that dared too much. Whether as a historical ruin or a moral parable, its legacy endures, whispering from the dunes that no kingdom, no matter how mighty, is eternal. The next time you hear the wind howl across an open desert, remember, some stories don't fade. They simply wait for the sands to shift again. While Atlantis dominated the Western imagination, a parallel legend rose from the vast blue expanse of the Pacific, Mu, the so-called motherland of all civilizations. This lost continent wasn't plucked from ancient texts or indigenous folklore, but rather spun from the controversial theories of a 19th-century eccentric, Augustus Le Plongeon. A self-proclaimed archaeologist and adventurer, Le Plongeon claimed to have deciphered Mayan hieroglyphs during his excavations in the Yucatan, uncovering references to a sunken empire that predated even Atlantis. According to him, Mu was a colossal landmass stretching across the Pacific, home to an advanced race whose survivors seeded cultures from Egypt to Mesoamerica. His ideas, dismissed by academics as pure fantasy, nonetheless ignited a firestorm of speculation, blending bad archaeology with a dash of Victorian exoticism. What makes Mu particularly intriguing isn't just its dubious origins, it's how it diverges from other Lost Kingdom myths. Unlike Atlantis or Lemuria, which had roots in Plato's dialogues or scientific hypotheses, Mu was essentially fabricated, a patchwork of misinterpretations and wishful thinking. Le Plongeon's theories relied on mistranslated Mayan codices and imaginative leaps, like insisting the word Mu in Yucatec Maya referred to the lost continent. Later figures like writer James Churchward amplified the myth in the 1920s, describing Mu as a utopia with 60 million inhabitants and technology rivaling modern science. Churchward's books, though thoroughly debunked, became foundational texts for New Age believers who repurposed Mu as a spiritual paradise destroyed by volcanic cataclysms. Yet here's where the story twists. While Mu itself is a modern fiction, the Pacific does hold genuine legends of sunken lands once far older and richer than Le Plongeon's invention. Polynesian oral traditions speak of Hawaii, the ancestral homeland from which their great migrations began. Unlike Mu's pseudoscientific grandeur, Hawaii is a tangible cultural touchstone, a place of origin remembered in chants, dances, and navigation lore. For the Maori of New Zealand, Hawaii isn't lost. It's a spiritual and physical homeland, their Eden and their Alexandria. Similarly, Hawaiian myths tell of Kahiki, a distant land of gods and ancestors, sometimes linked to Tahiti but often existing in a mythic space between memory and imagination. The contrast between Mu and these authentic traditions reveals something crucial: how easily outsider fantasies can overshadow indigenous knowledge. Le Plongeon and Churchward's Mu was a colonialist daydream, a blank slate onto which they projected their obsessions with noble savages and white-coded super-civilizations. Meanwhile, Hawaii and Kahiki are living narratives, still invoked in ceremonies and genealogies. Modern science adds another layer. Geologists confirm that parts of the Pacific, like Zealandia, did sink beneath the waves millions of years ago, long before humans existed. But for Pacific Islanders, the real lost lands aren't continents. They're the islands swallowed by rising seas within the last few thousand years, their names preserved in stories of resilience, not pseudoscientific speculation. Mu endures today as a cautionary tale, not just about the dangers of misguided archaeology, but about whose stories we privilege. It's a reminder that the ocean's greatest mysteries aren't imaginary empires, but the real, unrecorded histories of people who navigated its waters for millennia, carrying their homelands in their hearts long after the tides took the land away. Far to the north, beyond the lands where Rome's legions marched and Greece's philosophers pondered, ancient geographers whispered of a place so distant it defied comprehension. Thule. The Greek explorer Pytheas first mentioned it around 320 BC after his voyage into the frigid North Atlantic, describing an island where the summer sun never set and the sea congealed into a slush so thick ships could go no further. To the Greeks and Romans, Thule wasn't just a location. It was the edge of the known world, a realm of mist and mystery that symbolized the limits of human exploration. Some scholars believe Pytheas was referencing Norway, Iceland, or even the Shetland Islands, places where the midnight sun and icy waters matched his account. Others argue his Thule might have been a traveler's exaggeration, a story spun to impress audiences back home. But whether real or embellished, the idea of an ultimate northern outpost captured imaginations, becoming a metaphor for the unreachable, the point beyond which no one could go. What's fascinating, though, is how Thule's meaning shifted over centuries. Roman poets like Virgil and Seneca transformed it from a geographical curiosity into a poetic symbol of endurance, a land hardened by frost but unconquered by time. Medieval mapmakers, working with fragments of ancient knowledge, placed it on the fringes of their parchment worlds, sometimes conflating it with Scandinavia, Greenland, or mythical islands like Hyperborea. For Renaissance scholars, Thule became a puzzle to solve, a blank space on the map that invited speculation. But just as Hyperborea's legacy took a dark turn, so too did Thule's, warped by 20th century ideologies into something far removed from its classical roots. The distortion began with the Thule Society, a secretive German nationalist group formed in the chaotic aftermath of World War I. Obsessed with occultism and racial purity, its members latched onto Thule as the ancestral homeland of the Aryan race, blending pseudo-history with anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. To them, Thule wasn't just an island, it was a lost Nordic paradise, its supposed inhabitants the blue-eyed, blonde-haired progenitors of white civilization. This mythos seeped into Nazi ideology, with figures like Rudolf Hess and Heinrich Himmler funding expeditions to Scandinavia and Tibet in search of Thule's descendants. The irony, of course, is that the original Thule had no racial connotations. It was a place of wonder, not weaponized identity. Today, Thule's duality endures. In Greenland, the U.S. airbase at Thule nods to the ancient name, a modern outpost in a landscape Pythias might still recognize. Meanwhile, archaeologists in Scotland's Shetland Islands point to Brock's Iron Age stone towers as possible remnants of the culture Pythias encountered. But perhaps the most poignant twist is found in the Sami people of Scandinavia, whose oral traditions speak of Sapmi, a northern homeland rich in tradition. They never needed a mythical Thule. Their own history, rooted in the Arctic's rhythms, was real all along. Thule's journey from exploratory landmark to nationalist rallying cry reveals how easily myths can be twisted to serve ideologies. But strip away the distortions and its core remains, a reminder that the human mind has always been drawn to the edges of maps, to the places just out of reach. Whether as a navigator's waypoint or a poet's metaphor, Thule endures not as a lost kingdom but as an eternal question: what lies beyond the horizon? Beneath our feet, far beyond the deepest caves and the molten core of textbooks, there's a legend that the earth isn't solid at all, but hollow, hiding a vast, sunlit realm where an ancient civilization thrives in secret. This is Agartha, the mythical subterranean kingdom said to stretch beneath continents like a hidden twin to our surface world. Unlike Atlantis or Mu, swallowed by oceans, Agartha's allure lies in its inaccessibility. It's not lost to time, it's deliberately concealed, a paradise of advanced beings who chose to retreat from humanity's chaos. But how did this fantastical idea take root? And why has it gripped everyone from Tibetan lamas to Nazi occultists? The story begins in the Himalayas, where Buddhist traditions speak of Shambhala's counterpart, a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the mountains guarded by enlightened sages. French occultist Alexander Saint-Yves d'Alveda catapulted Agartha into Western esoterica in the late 19th century, claiming to have received coded knowledge about its network of cities lit by an inner sun, ruled by a divine monarchy. His writings, blending Eastern mysticism with European royalist fantasies, described Agartha as a utopia of peace and technology, where inhabitants wielded psychic powers and energy beyond surface dwellers' comprehension. The concept resonated in an era hungry for alternatives to industrial modernity, offering a literal underworld of untouched wisdom. But Agartha's darkest chapter unfolded in the shadows of World War II. Nazi mystics, already obsessed with Hyperborea and Thule, fixated on the hollow earth theory as proof of Aryan supremacy. Expeditions like the 1938 Nazi Tibet mission, led by Ernst Scheffer, sought entrances to Agartha in the Himalayas, convinced that Tibetan monks held maps to underground Aryan ancestors. Himmler's SS even funded experiments to detect Agartha's inner sun using radar, while Hollow Earth enthusiasts like Admiral Bayard's apocryphal Operation Highjump diary became Nazi propaganda tools. The irony: Tibetan texts describe Agartha's gatekeepers as opposed to violence, a far cry from the Third Reich's twisted interpretation. Modern science, of course, dismisses the hollow earth as physically impossible. Yet Agartha persists, reinvented by ufologists who link it to alien bases, or by New Agers envisioning it as a spiritual refuge from climate collapse. Beneath the pseudoscience, though, lies a profound metaphor, the human longing for a sanctuary, a place untouched by our own destruction. Whether as a Himalayan cave system or a psychological archetype, Agartha endures not because it's real, but because it answers a deeper question: what if salvation isn't above us but below, waiting in the quiet dark? Off the coast of Wales, where Cardigan Bay's waves crash against the rugged shoreline, lies a legend as old as the sea itself: Contraguod, the Bottom 100, a fertile kingdom said to have vanished beneath the waters in a single calamitous night. Unlike Atlantis's grand empire or Lioness's Arthurian ties, Contraguod feels deeply personal, a story rooted in the rhythms of daily life before tragedy struck. According to Welsh folklore, this wasn't just any land. It was a paradise of 16 villages, lush pastures, and a great dike protecting it from the sea. The kingdom thrived under the watch of two princes, but its fate hinged on one flawed man, Sethanin, the drunken gatekeeper tasked with guarding the sluice gates. On a stormy evening, lost in revelry, he neglected his duty and the sea rushed in, drowning the kingdom and its people. To this day, locals claim that when the wind is just right, you can still hear the church bells of Contraguod tolling beneath the waves, a haunting echo of what was lost. The tale's earliest written form appears in the Black Book of Carmarthen, a 13th century manuscript, but its roots are far older, passed down through bardic traditions. What makes Contraguod so compelling is how it mirrors real geological events. Around 6,000 years ago, rising sea levels transformed the British coastline, swallowing vast stretches of low-lying land. The kingdom's description, protected by a dike rich in farmland, matches the now submerged plains off Wales's coast, where fishermen have dragged up ancient tree stumps and peat beds from the seabed. In 2012, sonar surveys revealed a line of submerged stones near Borth, stretching nearly a kilometer, which some archaeologists believe could be the remnants of Contraguod's fabled dike. Others point to Sarn Badrig, a mysterious underwater ridge visible at low tide, as a possible boundary of the lost land. Yet Contraguod's power isn't just in its possible reality, it's in what it represents. The story isn't merely about natural disaster, it's about human failing. Sethanin's negligence echoes universal themes of responsibility and consequence, a warning as relevant today as it was 1,000 years ago. Modern adaptations, from poems to folk songs, keep the legend alive, often reimagining the drowned kingdom as a metaphor for climate change, a reminder of how easily our own world could slip beneath the waves. Whether as history or myth, Contraguod endures because it's not just a lost kingdom, it's a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears about the fragile line between safety and ruin. Walk the beaches of Cardigan Bay at dusk and you might feel it, the whisper of a kingdom just beneath your feet, waiting for the tide to pull back and reveal its secrets. Until then, the bells keep ringing, a ghostly lullaby for a land the sea refuses to forget. In the heart of the Libyan desert, where the sun scorches the earth and mirages dance on the horizon, there's a legend whispered by Bedouin tribes for centuries: Zazora, the oasis of the birds. Unlike the drowned cities or hollow earth myths, Zazora's allure lies in its tantalizing elusiveness. A white-walled city hidden among golden dunes, its gates unlocked only by a magical key, its streets silent save for the songs of its namesake birds. The earliest mentions come from 15th century Arab manuscripts, describing a place so lush and secret that only the bravest or most foolhardy would dare seek it. But what makes Zazora fascinating isn't just its mystery. It's how this local legend became an obsession for European explorers, transforming from folklore into a grail of colonial ambition. The turning point came in the early 20th century when British officers and Hungarian aristocrats, armed with compasses and sheer audacity, set out to find Zazora. Figures like Ralph Bagnold, a desert explorer who later founded the Long-Range Desert Group in World War II, mapped the Libyan desert's uncharted reaches, convinced Zazora was more than myth. They weren't chasing mere fantasy, they were following breadcrumbs of real geography. The Gilf Kebir, a massive plateau in southwest Egypt, held clues, cave paintings of swimmers in what's now the world's driest place, suggesting a greener past. Then, in 1933, the Hungarian explorer Laszlo Almasi, the real-life inspiration for the English patient, claimed to discover the Zazora Valley, a hidden stretch of vegetation amid the sands. Was this the fabled oasis? Almasi thought so, but the truth, as always, was murkier. Modern archaeology paints a different picture. Zazora might not have been a single city, but a composite of real and imagined refuges. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. 6,000 years ago, it was a savanna crisscrossed by rivers. As the climate dried, pockets of life remained, places like the Wadi Sura caves or the Ubari lakes, where prehistoric art and palm-fringed waters echo the descriptions of Zazora. Bedouin oral traditions likely preserved these fading memories, blending them into a single mythical haven. Even the birds in Zazora's name could reference actual migratory routes, with flocks descending on rare oases like lifeboats in a sandy sea. Yet Zazora's legacy isn't just about solving a riddle, it's about the human need to believe in hidden sanctuaries. For the Bedouin, it symbolized resilience. For Europeans, it was a blank canvas for adventure. Today, as satellites map every inch of the planet, Zazora endures not as a place to be found, but as a metaphor. In a world where little remains unexplored, it reminds us that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to keep us searching. Across the icy waters of the North Atlantic, where Viking longships once sliced through the waves, Norse sagas whisper of a place stranger than any skald's tale, Hvatrammanand, the land of the white men. This wasn't just another stop on their voyages. It was a realm of pale-skinned people living in grand houses, their language unintelligible yet their demeanor peaceful. The saga of Erik the Red and the Grönlandinga saga describe it lying somewhere southwest of Greenland, a place stumbled upon by Viking explorers centuries before Columbus. But who were these mysterious white men, and could their land have been a real, if forgotten, chapter of pre-Columbian history? The most compelling clue lies in the saga's eerie alignment with indigenous North American oral traditions. The Mi'kmaq people of present-day Canada's eastern coast speak of Cluskap's land, a legendary home of fair-haired, bearded strangers who arrived long ago in great floating houses. Even more striking are the accounts of the Beothuk, Newfoundland's now extinct indigenous group, who were described by European settlers as unusually light-skinned, some with blonde hair and blue eyes, leading to theories they might have mingled with Norse visitors generations earlier. Could Hvatrammanand have been a Viking name for a contact zone, a place where Norse and indigenous cultures briefly intertwined? Then there's the physical evidence. At Elant's Oaks Meadows in Newfoundland, the only confirmed Viking settlement in North America, archaeologists found butternuts, a tree species that grows hundreds of miles south, suggesting the Norse ventured far beyond their known camps. But Hvatrammanand's description in the sagas implies something more than a seasonal outpost, a settled society already established when the Vikings arrived. Some scholars propose it might reference the Dorset people, a Paleo-Inuit culture with distinctively pale complexions who vanished around the time of Norse contact, possibly due to conflict or assimilation. Others speculate it could point to early European fishermen, Basques, or Irish monks who may have crossed the Atlantic long before recorded history. Yet the mystery deepens with the saga's unsettling epilogue. According to the texts, the Viking explorer Thorfinn Karlsefni encountered a native boy in Markland, likely Labrador, who spoke of men dressed in white, performing rituals and carrying poles, a description some interpret as Christian clergy with processional crosses. This fuels theories about Hvatrammanand being tied to the legendary Great Ireland, a supposed colony of Irish monks led by Saint Brendan, said to have reached North America in the 6th century. Medieval maps even label phantom islands like Hvatrammanand and Erlandit Mikla in the North Atlantic, blurring the line between folklore and lost history. What makes Hvatrammanand so haunting isn't just the question of its existence, it's what it reveals about how cultures remember. The Norse sagas, once dismissed as fiction, were proven right about Vinland. Indigenous stories, long ignored by mainstream history, mirror the saga's details. Even the name Land of the White Men hints at a deeper truth, that first contacts were often moments of mutual awe, not just conquest. Whether Hvatrammanand was a fleeting encounter, a lost settlement, or a myth spun from half-remembered voyages, it lingers as a testament to the untold stories hidden in the margins of history, waiting for the right tide to bring them ashore. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, where the canopy swallows the sky and the air hums with the buzz of unseen life, a legend persists, one that's lured explorers to their deaths and fueled treasure hunts for centuries. This is Patiti, the Incan lost city of gold, a place so shrouded in mystery that even its existence teeters between history and myth. Unlike El Dorado's glittering mirage born from Spanish greed, Patiti's roots dig deep into indigenous lore. Inca oral traditions speak of a refuge city, a final stronghold where their rulers fled with golden treasures after the Spanish conquest in the 16th century, vanishing into the jungle's embrace. But was Patiti a real citadel or just another colonial fantasy twisted into something more? The first written hints appear in Spanish colonial records, where conquistadors scribbled feverish accounts of a jungle kingdom dripping with gold. Most famously, the missionary Andrés López wrote in 1600 of a vast city called Patite, ruled by descendants of the Inca, hidden beyond waterfalls and guarded by tribes who shot trespassers with poisoned darts. These reports, though riddled with exaggeration, weren't entirely baseless. After the fall of Vilcabamba, the last Incan holdout, survivors likely scattered deeper into the Amazon, carrying their culture with them. Modern archaeologists point to ruins like Lemuria, discovered in 1979, where terraces and stone structures echo Incan design, suggesting at least some truth to the dispersal. Then came the 21st century, and with it, a high-tech hunt for Patiti. Satellite imaging and LiDAR scans have peeled back layers of vegetation, revealing sprawling earthworks and geometric shapes in Peru's Madre de Dios region. In 2001, Italian archaeologist Mario Poglia uncovered a 17th-century Jesuit manuscript in the Vatican archives, describing a golden city near a waterfall eerily matching local Matsajanka tales of Panteocola, a sacred zone avoided for generations. But the most tantalizing clues come from the ground itself. Expeditions led by French explorer Thierry Jamin in the 2010s reported finding rock carvings of serpents and staircases leading into uncharted valleys, though funding and the jungle's relentless grip have stalled deeper exploration. What makes Patiti so compelling isn't just the potential treasure, it's the cultural stakes. For the Inca's descendants, like the Cuero people, Patiti isn't a ruin to plunder but a living symbol of resistance, a place where their ancestors' spirit survives. Indigenous guides whisper that the city isn't lost, it's hiding, revealing itself only to those who approach with respect. That duality between colonial greed and indigenous reverence is what keeps the legend alive. Whether Patiti was a city, a network of hideouts, or a metaphor for cultural survival, its power endures in the quiet defiance of the jungle itself, guarding its secrets in green shadows and golden silence. Beneath the storm-tossed waves of the Baltic Sea, where the salt spray stings the air and the gulls cry like lost souls, lies the legend of Vintur, a city so wealthy, so decadent that the sea itself rose to swallow it whole. Slavic and Germanic folklore whisper of this fabled port, a medieval Venice of the north, where merchants haggled over amber and furs in crowded marketplaces, and church spires gleamed so bright they blinded sailors at dawn. But Vintur's glory came at a price. The stories say its people grew arrogant, their hearts hardened by greed until they mocked a beggar woman who turned out to be a goddess in disguise. As punishment, the waters surged over their walls in a single night, drowning the sinners and silencing their bells forever. Yet what makes Vintur more than just another moral fable is the eerie physical evidence scattered along the Baltic coast. For centuries, fishermen near Euston Island have hauled up strange artifacts in their nets: medieval coins, pottery shards, even fragments of wooden pilings that suggest a sprawling settlement beneath the waves. In the 1950s, East German archaeologists identified a submerged site near the village of Kozro, where sonar revealed unnatural ridges and geometric shapes under the seabed. Local divers describe stone foundations at depths matching medieval sea levels, and in 2015, researchers using 3D imaging mapped what appeared to be the remnants of a harbor, its layout strikingly similar to other Hanseatic trading hubs of the era. The debate hinges on a tantalizing question: was Vainto a real city lost to coastal erosion, or a cautionary tale stitched together from half-remembered disasters? Historians note that the Baltic shoreline has shifted dramatically over the centuries, swallowing towns like Rungholt, a prosperous Frisian port devoured by a storm surge in 1362. Vainto's description, a multicultural hub where Slavic, Viking, and German traders mingled, mirrors the real-life emporium of Jomsborg, a semi-mythical Viking stronghold near modern Wollin, Poland. Even the name Vainto might be a Germanic twist on Jumni, the Slavic trading center documented by medieval chroniclers like Adam of Bremen, but the most haunting clue lies in the stories themselves. Along the Pomeranian coast, villagers still recount variations of the drowning tale. Some blame the city's greed, others its cruelty to animals or its rejection of Christianity. In every version, the sea doesn't just destroy Vainto, it preserves it. Fishermen swear that on calm days, when the light hits the water just right, you can see rooftops and towers shimmering below, and when storms roll in, the drowned bells ring a warning to those who dare repeat Vainto's sins. Whether as history or allegory, the city's legacy endures, a glittering ruin beneath the waves that reminds us no empire, no matter how rich, is immune to nature's judgment. Walk the beaches of Usedom at twilight, and you might feel it, the whisper of salt in the wind, the weight of centuries pressing against the shore. Vainto isn't gone. It's waiting, its stories etched not just in sand and stone, but in the restless pulse of the tide itself. Deep beneath the still waters of Lake Svetloyar, where the Russian forest reflects like a perfect mirror, lies a secret not even the deepest dive can uncover: the holy city of Kitesh. According to Orthodox legend, this wasn't just a kingdom lost to time, but one deliberately hidden from the eyes of the unworthy. The story begins in the 13th century, when Mongol invaders under Batu Khan swept across Russia, burning villages and churches in their path. As their armies approached Kitesh, its pious citizens prayed for salvation, and in a miracle that blurs the line between history and divine intervention, the ground itself opened, swallowing the city whole as a shimmering mist rose from the lake to cloak it from view. To this day, believers claim that on quiet mornings when the air is thick with dew, you can hear the faint echo of church bells ringing beneath the waves, a chorus of the faithful frozen in time. What sets Kitesh apart from other sunken cities isn't just its miraculous disappearance, it's its enduring role as a spiritual beacon. Unlike Atlantis's hubris or Vainto's greed, Kitesh's legend is one of purity and transcendence. Russian Orthodox tradition holds that the city remains intact beneath the lake, visible only to those free of sin. Pilgrims still trek to Svetloyar's shores, some kneeling to drink from its waters, convinced they carry healing properties. The lake itself, nestled in the Nizhny Novgorod region, defies science with its near-perfect oval shape and unexplored depths, fueling speculation that it might conceal physical ruins. Soviet expeditions in the 1960s detected unusual limestone formations below, while modern sonar scans reveal what could be man-made structures, though skeptics argue these are natural formations twisted by wishful thinking. The parallels to other sacred drowned lands are impossible to ignore. Like Wales's Contraguod or India's Dwarka, Kitesh represents the idea of a sanctuary preserved by divine will, a place where faith literally bends reality. But there's a uniquely Russian gravity to this tale, one tied to the country's turbulent history of invasions and spiritual resilience. During the Soviet era, when religion was suppressed, Kitesh became a covert symbol of resistance, a metaphor for the Orthodox Church's survival beneath the surface of state atheism. Writers and composers, from Rimsky-Korsakov to modern novelists, have retold the story as an allegory for cultural endurance, yet Kitezh's true power lies in its ambiguity. Is it a physical city waiting to be rediscovered, a metaphor for the unseen kingdom of heaven, or both? The legend refuses to choose, and perhaps that's why it endures. In a world obsessed with proof, Kitezh remains a rare kind of mystery, one that asks not for solutions but for belief. Stand by Lake Svetloyar at dawn, and you might just hear it, the whisper of a city that chose to vanish rather than surrender, its bells tolling not in mourning but in timeless defiance. Long before Tenochtitlan's towering pyramids pierced the sky, the Aztec people told stories of a far different homeland, a place of reeds and whispering waters known as Aztlán. Unlike the glittering capitals of other lost kingdoms, Aztlán wasn't a city of gold or a drowned metropolis, but a humble marshy refuge where the Mexica, as they called themselves, began their journey. According to the Boccherini Codex, a 16th century pictorial manuscript, Aztlán was where the Aztec god Huitzilopochtli commanded his people to wander until they found an eagle perched on a cactus devouring a snake, the sign that would mark their destined home. This prophecy, of course, led them to the Valley of Mexico, where they built one of history's greatest empires. But what's fascinating isn't just the myth itself. It's how Aztlán's meaning has transformed over centuries, morphing from an origin story into a political symbol, a cultural rallying cry, and even a modern battleground over identity. The earliest descriptions of Aztlán are frustratingly vague. Aztec codices depict it as an island in a lake, surrounded by herons and waterlogged fields, a far cry from the arid landscapes often associated with it today. Some scholars, like historian Miguel León Portilla, argue Aztlán might have been inspired by real wetlands in western Mexico, possibly around Nayarit or Michoacán, where indigenous groups like the Purepecha thrived. Others suggest it could trace back to the ancestral homelands of the Uto-Aztecan peoples, whose migrations spanned from the American Southwest deep into Mesoamerica. But here's the twist: the Aztecs themselves seemed uninterested in pinpointing Aztlán's location. For them, it wasn't a place to return to, but a starting point, a metaphorical womb that birthed their identity. Then came the 20th century, and Aztlán took on a radical new life. During the Chicano movement of the 1960s and 70s, activists reclaimed the myth as a symbol of indigenous sovereignty over the U.S. Southwest. Posters and murals depicted Aztlán as a lost homeland stretching from Texas to California, a narrative that framed Mexican Americans not as immigrants, but as descendants reclaiming stolen territory. The 1969 Plan Espiritual de Aztlán, a manifesto drafted at the National Chicano Youth Liberation Conference, declared the Southwest a occupied Mexico and called for cultural revival. This wasn't just nostalgia, it was a political grenade challenging borders drawn by war and treaties like the 1848 Guadalupe Hidalgo. But the romanticized Aztlán of the Chicano movement sparked fierce debate. Archaeologists pointed out there's no evidence the Aztecs ever settled north of the Rio Grande. Critics argued that grafting a Mesoamerican myth onto the Southwest ignored the region's actual indigenous peoples, the Diné, Apache, and Pueblo nations whose ancestors had lived there for millennia. Even within Latino communities, opinions fractured. Some embraced Aztlán as a unifying symbol. Others saw it as divisive, a fantasy that alienated potential allies in broader struggles for civil rights. Today, Aztlán exists in a liminal space, part myth, part metaphor, part geopolitical flashpoint. In Utah, a right-wing group erected a tongue-in-cheek "Welcome to Aztlán" sign near the Mexican border, stoking fears of Reconquista. Meanwhile, artists like Guillermo Gómez Peña reimagine Aztlán as a post-national ideal, a cultural crossroads beyond borders. And in academia, scholars like Rudy Acuna frame it as less about geography and more about resistance, a story that, like all great origin myths, bends to fit the needs of those who tell it. The true power of Aztlán lies in its elasticity. It's a reminder that lost kingdoms aren't always made of stone or gold. Sometimes they're built from stories, and those stories can outlast empires. Whether as a spiritual homeland, a protest slogan, or a historian's puzzle, Aztlán endures not because we've found it, but because we're still searching. Long before modern scholars debated sunken continents, Tamil poets were already singing of a land swallowed by the sea, an advanced civilization called Rootas, described in ancient Sangam literature as a sprawling kingdom of scholars, artists, and engineers. Unlike Atlantis's Greek origins or Mu's pseudoscientific invention, Rootas emerges from a living cultural memory, preserved in Tamil Nadu's oral traditions for millennia. The epic Silappatikaram paints Rootas as a verdant paradise, a place where poets competed in grand academies under jeweled pavilions, where astronomers mapped the stars with uncanny precision, and where the first rainfall of the season was celebrated with festivals that lasted for weeks. But Rootas's golden age ended in catastrophe. According to the texts, earthquakes shattered its foundations, and the ocean rose in a single night to claim it, leaving only scattered survivors to carry its legacy to the mainland. What makes Rootas more than just another flood myth is its eerie alignment with geological reality. The Sunderland Shelf, a massive subcontinent that once connected Southeast Asia to Indonesia, did indeed vanish beneath rising seas around 12,000 years ago as glaciers melted at the end of the last ice age. Modern sonar mapping reveals drowned river valleys and submerged mountains stretching from the Andaman Islands to Java, landscapes that would have been home to thriving human populations. Tamil nationalists and some researchers argue that Rootas wasn't mere allegory but a cultural echo of this real-world disaster, a memory passed down through generations of coastal dwellers who witnessed their world disappearing wave by wave. The theory gains traction when examining linguistic breadcrumbs. The word Rootas shares roots with Rusi, an ancient Tamil term for lost to the sea, while Indonesian folklore speaks of Ratu, a sunken city of wise rulers. Even more compelling are the architectural parallels. The stepped pyramids of Cambodia's Angkor Wat and Tamil Nadu's Brihadiswara temple share uncanny resemblances, suggesting a shared cultural ancestry perhaps rooted in Rootas. But here's where the debate ignites. Mainstream archaeologists dismiss Rootas as myth, pointing out that Sangam literature blends history with symbolism. Others propose a middle ground, that Rootas might have been a real coastal metropolis, possibly in present-day Sri Lanka or the Maldives, later mythologized after rising seas or tsunamis erased it from the map. Rootas's legacy today is a tapestry of pride and politics. For Tamil revivalists, it's proof of a maritime superculture predating the Indus Valley. For oceanographers, it's a case study in how oral traditions preserve environmental cataclysms. And for treasure hunters, it's a siren call. Expeditions have scoured the Indian Ocean for decades, hoping to find Rootas's fabled libraries beneath coral reefs. But perhaps the most haunting clue lies in a lesser-known Sangam poem, which claims the waves didn't just take Rootas, they hid it, keeping its secrets until the world is ready to understand them. Whether as history or metaphor, Rootas endures not because we've found it, but because it refuses to let us forget the fragility of even the greatest civilizations. Somewhere west of Brittany, where the Atlantic stretches into an endless blue unknown, medieval mapmakers drew an island that never existed, Maida, a crescent-shaped enigma floating just beyond the edges of their parchment worlds. Unlike the legendary realms born from folklore or religious texts, Maida's origins are purely cartographic, a phantom born from sailors' tall tales and the stubborn persistence of human error. First appearing on 14th-century Portolan charts, this mysterious landmass was depicted as a jagged half-moon, often labeled Insula de Maida or Asmaida, sometimes accompanied by cryptic notes claiming it was seen by many, but never reliably anchored to a specific voyage. For over 300 years, Maida haunted maps, drifting slightly north or south with each new edition, its existence unchallenged by the era's greatest navigators. But what made this imaginary island so believable, and why did it take centuries for it to finally vanish from the charts? The answer lies in a perfect storm of confusion and wishful thinking. One theory points to the Azores, a real archipelago whose easternmost island, Santa Maria, bears a vague resemblance to Maida's crescent shape. Early Portuguese explorers might have glimpsed it through storm clouds, their fragmented reports later distorted by copyists who'd never sailed beyond the Mediterranean. Others suggest Maida was a misreading of Arabic maps, where the term al-Maid referred not to an island but to a navigational concept, a midpoint or meeting place at sea. But the most compelling explanation involves a far darker mirage, the optical illusions and desperation of sailors lost in the Atlantic's vastness. When fog, haze, or the notorious Fata Morgana effect distorted the horizon, even seasoned mariners could swear they saw land, especially after weeks adrift. These false sightings, scribbled into logbooks and passed between ports, became the brittle foundation for Maida's myth. Yet the island's grip on cartographers wasn't just about mistakes, it was about the psychology of the unknown. In an age when maps were as much art as science, blank spaces were unacceptable. Empty oceans threatened the medieval worldview, where every corner of creation was meant to be filled with divine purpose. Maida, like its sister phantom islands Hy Brasil and Antillia, served as a placeholder for the unexplored, a reassuring lie that said, here too there is something. Even as late as the 1700s, when explorers like Captain James Cook had debunked most phantom lands, some mapmakers clung to Maida, redrawing it as a tiny speck near the Grand Banks, perhaps conflating it with the real but elusive Green Island, a shoal occasionally glimpsed but never reliably charted. The final nail in Maida's coffin came with the rise of scientific cartography. By the 19th century, navigational tools had advanced enough to confirm the Atlantic held no hidden crescent islands. But Maida's ghost lingers in the quirks of history, a reminder that every era has its own edges, its own comforting fictions. Today, satellite imagery leaves no room for such phantoms, yet the instinct they reveal remains, the human need to fill voids with stories, even if those stories are written in the shaky hand of a medieval scribe, dreaming of land where there is only sea. In the fevered dreams of medieval Europe, a rumor spread like wildfire of a kingdom glowing with piety and power, ruled by a priest-king who could crush Muslim armies and reunite Christendom. This was the fabled realm of Prester John, a legend so potent it reshaped empires and sent explorers chasing phantoms across 2 continents. The story first crystallized in a fantastical letter that surfaced around 1165, allegedly written by Prester John himself and addressed to the Byzantine emperor. The text described a paradise where milk and honey flowed, where unicorns trotted through palace gardens, and where 72 kings paid homage to this Christian monarch. But what made the legend so explosive wasn't just its extravagance, it was its timing. The Crusades were faltering, and Europe desperately needed a miracle. Prester John's kingdom, wherever it lay, promised a divine ally who could strike Islam from the rear, sandwiching their enemies between 2 Christian forces. At first, the kingdom's imagined location pulsed somewhere in the vastness of Asia. Marco Polo's travels fueled this belief as he recounted tales of Nestorian Christian communities in Central Asia, survivors of ancient schisms who might align with Rome. Some even conflated Prester John with the Mongol warlord Togrul, a Nestorian ruler defeated by Genghis Khan, proof that reality and myth could blur when wishful thinking ran wild. But when Mongol armies sacked Baghdad in 1258 and showed no interest in converting to Christianity, the dream of an Asian Prester John crumbled. The legend didn't die, though. It simply packed up and moved. By the 1400s, European maps began placing his kingdom in Ethiopia, a real Christian nation that, to medieval cartographers, seemed just mysterious enough to fit the bill. Portuguese explorers venturing down Africa's coast carried letters addressed to Prester John in their holds, hoping to forge an alliance that would outflank the Ottoman Empire. The irony, of course, was that Ethiopia's emperors had no idea they were supposed to be Prester John. When Portuguese envoys finally reached the court of Emperor Lebna Dengel in 1520, they found a sophisticated Christian kingdom, one that had been isolated from Europe for centuries but followed its own ancient traditions. The Ethiopians were amused by the Europeans' confusion, though they shrewdly played along when it suited their diplomatic needs, yet the political fallout of this myth was very real. The Prester John fantasy justified crusades, funded expeditions, and even influenced papal policy. It was a geopolitical mirage, one that revealed more about Europe's fears and ambitions than any hidden utopia. What makes Prester John's kingdom so fascinating isn't just its endurance, it's how it reflects the power of collective delusion. Here was a legend that refused to be disproven, simply relocating whenever reality intruded. It thrived on the unknown, filling blank spaces on maps with hope. Even today, the name lingers as a metaphor for the eternal human hunger for saviors, whether in the form of a long-lost Christian king, a golden city in the jungle, or a promised land just over the horizon. The real Prester John was never a person but a mirror, showing us how easily faith and fantasy can shape the course of history. For centuries, the fate of the 10 lost tribes of Israel has been one of history's most enduring riddles, a mystery wrapped in scripture, scattered across continents, and claimed by cultures thousands of miles from the ancient Near East. When the Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE, its people vanished from the historical record, deported into oblivion. Yet rather than fading into obscurity, their legend grew, morphing into a tapestry of global folklore that stretches from the mountains of Afghanistan to the plains of North America. What makes these stories so compelling isn't just the question of where the tribes went. It's how their disappearance became a mirror for countless communities searching for their own sacred origins. Take the case of the Beta Israel, Ethiopia's Jewish community, who practiced a form of Judaism untouched by rabbinic traditions for millennia. Their oral histories tell of a migration southward after the fall of the temple, a journey that placed them far from mainstream Jewish life until modern DNA studies revealed genetic links to Levantine populations. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, early European colonists were astonished to encounter Native American tribes like the Lenape, whose customs, from circumcision to lunar festivals, seemed eerily reminiscent of ancient Israelite practices. These parallels sparked theories that the 10 tribes had crossed the Bering Strait, becoming the ancestors of indigenous peoples. Even the Pashtuns of Afghanistan and Pakistan proudly trace their lineage to King Saul, citing tribal codes and physical features as proof of their Israelite heritage. But here's where the story twists. While some connections are cultural coincidences, others reveal deeper truths about how identity is constructed. The Mormon belief that some tribes migrated to the Americas isn't just doctrine, it's a narrative that reshaped an entire religion's worldview. In Japan, the mysterious Ainu people and even Emperor Hirohito himself once entertained theories linking their origins to the tribes, a notion that gained traction in the 1930s as nationalist ideology sought divine ancestry. These claims, whether spiritual or political, highlight a universal human impulse, the need to anchor ourselves to something ancient and ordained. The 10 tribes' legacy thrives not because we've found them, but because their absence leaves room for reinvention. They're the ultimate diasporic symbol, a people forever scattered yet paradoxically present in the stories of those who claim them. Whether as a theological mystery or a cultural touchstone, their vanishing act endures, reminding us that sometimes the most powerful histories are the ones we're still writing. Among the 7 wonders of the ancient world, none has sparked more debate than the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a paradise said to have floated above the desert, its terraces bursting with foreign blooms and cascading waterfalls, all suspended impossibly in midair. The problem, despite centuries of searching, archaeologists have found no trace of them in Babylon. The only detailed accounts come from Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, writing centuries after the gardens supposedly thrived. Their descriptions are vivid, tiered gardens rising like a ziggurat, irrigated by complex hydraulic systems, but their sources were second-hand at best. So where does that leave us? Either Babylon's most famous landmark never existed, or we've been looking in the wrong place all along. Here's where the plot thickens. Recent scholarship points to Nineveh, the capital of Babylon's rival, Assyria, as the garden's true location. Dr. Stephanie Daly of Oxford University has spent decades piecing together a compelling case. Cuneiform tablets from Nineveh describe King Sennacherib's palace gardens in the 7th century BCE, boasting of an unrivaled paradise with exotic plants hauled from distant lands. Even more convincing are the engineering feats. Sennacherib's inscriptions detail a massive aqueduct system and an Archimedes-like screw device to lift water centuries before the Greeks allegedly invented it. Carvings from his palace show lush gardens draping over arched walkways, a visual match for the Greek descriptions. If Daly's right, the gardens weren't hanging in the sense of dangling from walls, but overhanging from terraces, a translation error that sent historians on a wild goose chase for generations. Yet the mystery deepens when you consider why no physical evidence remains. Babylon's ruins have been extensively excavated, with every brick of Nebuchadnezzar's reign catalogued, but nothing aligns with the garden's description. Nineveh, meanwhile, was sacked and burned in 612 BC, its gardens likely reduced to ash. The Tigris River, which once fed Sennacherib's aqueducts, has shifted course over millennia, erasing crucial landmarks. Even if the gardens were real, their organic splendor, wooden trellises, perishable plants, and soil-packed terraces would have decayed without a trace. It's a sobering reminder that not all wonders are built of stone. Some are as fleeting as the flowers they once held. The Hanging Gardens' legacy endures not because we've found them, but because they represent an idea humanity's stubborn determination to carve beauty from barrenness. Whether in Babylon or Nineveh, their true power lies in the question they force us to confront. Does it matter if they were real when the dream alone has inspired empires? From the rooftop gardens of Rome to the modern green skyscrapers of Singapore, the spirit of the gardens lives on, proving that even if the dirt has settled, the wonder never will. Beneath the turquoise waters off India's western coast, where the Arabian Sea laps at the shores of Gujarat, lies a mystery that blurs the line between scripture and science, the sunken city of Dwarka. Hindu texts like the Mahabharata and the Puranas describe it in vivid detail, a majestic fortified kingdom built by Lord Krishna himself, its streets paved with gold, its towers studded with gemstones, and its harbors bustling with ships from distant lands. But the most haunting passage comes from the ancient text Harivamsa, which claims the sea swallowed Dwarka whole after Krishna's death, as if the ocean itself mourned his passing. For centuries, this was considered pure allegory until marine archaeologists began pulling artifacts from the seabed that matched the descriptions with uncanny precision. The breakthrough came in the 1980s when a team led by archaeologist Dr. S.R. Rao discovered a submerged settlement near modern-day Dwarka. Its stone walls, anchors, and pottery shards carbon dated to between 1500 and 3000 years old, a time frame that aligns with traditional estimates of Krishna's era. But the real astonishment came from the site's layout. The Mahabharata describes Dwarka as a circular city divided into sectors, connected by causeways and protected by massive gates. Underwater sonar imaging revealed precisely that, a grid-like pattern of structures resembling urban planning, with what appear to be the remnants of a grand gateway and a series of docks. Even more striking were the artifact stone anchors with 3 holes, identical to those mentioned in ancient Indian texts as tools for mooring large vessels. Yet for all these tantalizing clues, the debate is far from settled. Skeptics argue the underwater ruins could belong to a later port city, perhaps a medieval trading hub overwhelmed by rising sea levels. The lack of inscriptions directly linking the site to Krishna's Dwarka leaves room for doubt, but here's where the story takes a provocative turn. Geologists studying the region's coastline have identified evidence of a catastrophic event around 3,500 years ago, a possible tsunami or sudden subsidence that could explain the city's abrupt disappearance. This aligns with Hindu cosmology, which speaks of pralaya, cyclical destructions that reshape the world. What makes Dwarka's legend so compelling isn't just the question of its existence, it's the cultural weight it carries. For millions of devotees, the underwater ruins aren't mere archaeological curiosities. They're physical proof of divine history, a sacred bridge between myth and materiality. Scientists, meanwhile, see a cautionary tale about climate change, a reminder that even thriving coastal cities can vanish beneath the waves. The search continues, with new technologies like 3D mapping and sediment analysis offering fresh hope of uncovering Dwarka's secrets. Whether as a spiritual symbol or a historical puzzle, one thing is certain: the ocean hasn't given up all its answers yet. Dive into these waters, and you're not just exploring a lost city, you're navigating the depths of human belief itself. From sunken cities whispering beneath the waves to golden mirages swallowed by deserts, these lost kingdoms span continents, cultures, and millennia, yet they all share one undeniable thread: our endless fascination with civilizations that slip through time's grasp. Some, like Atlantis and Lemuria, reflect our awe of nature's power to erase even the mightiest empires. Others, like Avalon and Shangri-La, speak to our longing for sanctuaries untouched by chaos. And then there are the legends born from misunderstanding: El Dorado's golden man twisted into a city, Prester John's mythical kingdom projected onto real-world maps. What unites them isn't just their disappearance, but what their stories reveal about us. Consider the patterns. Flood myths, wise Contraguod, Dwarka, echo humanity's primal fear of water's caprice, while desert mirages like Zazora and Irram of the Pillars remind us how easily hope can harden into obsession. Political ideologies hijacked Hyperborea and Thule, proving myths can be weapons. Meanwhile, places like Aztlán and Rutas became vessels for cultural identity, their very ambiguity allowing generations to redefine them. These aren't just tales of loss, they're mirrors held up to our values, fears, and blind spots. So why does the idea of lost kingdoms grip us so tightly? Perhaps because they embody the ultimate what-if proof that history isn't set in stone, that gaps in the record leave room for wonder. Every crumbling ruin or half-translated text is an invitation to imagine, to question, to piece together puzzles with missing pieces. And in a world where Google Maps leaves few blanks unfilled, these legends offer something rare, mysteries that resist easy answers. Now it's your turn. Which of these vanished realms lingers in your imagination? Is it the drowned bells of Kitesh, the serpent-carved paths to Patiti, or the hollow earth enigma of Agartha? Drop your pick in the comments, and while you're there, share what you think still lies waiting to be found. After all, the next great discovery might begin with a story someone refused